Saints back on the practice field. Sean Fazan, Fox 8, good enough to join us as he often does, talk a little black and gold, who dat. Sean, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm actually leaving the Superdome as we speak here. You're doing all right.
What was the day like?
It was interesting. Everything got shifted indoors to the Superdome, which is fairly typical to get a practice in. Normally it's before the first preseason game inside the dome because there's a new turf, but this time a couple days after. I think we all saw that new turf was a little bit of a challenge. Was it Sunday? But anyway, they got back in here, did I guess about not quite 2 hours, maybe like an hour and 40, hour and 45. Did a couple scripted periods, they call it a period, which basically is an unscripted session. So got some decent work in. I think this is going to be our final open practice that we're able to see. And they kind of shift into regular season mode from here on out.
Kellen Moore said that he's not going to name a starter yet at quarterback. I mean, every conversation, Sean, has to involve some conversation about the quarterback.
Yeah.
Maybe do you have a reaction to that, or just from your experience, what you think this process might be like between now and the season opener against Arizona on September the 7th?
I think the team has already – he's kind of hinted at it today. I mean, they've already started with some things in terms of looking ahead to Arizona. Every team is doing this right now because they're week one season opener, moving, kind of looking ahead to what they could potentially be doing. As for the actual competition, it's hard to get a read on it because it felt like heading into that game that the arrow had really pointed towards Tyler Shuck. He had really been trending towards him. And in fact, I was of the belief that, my opinion here, that had Tyler Shuck come out and really played well or outplayed Spencer in that game, he probably would have been named the guy. Obviously, we saw what happened. Rattler obviously finished well. You could say Rattler clearly outplayed Tyler Shuck in that game. So does that put it back to the drawing board, and they got a couple more days to evaluate this thing and one more preseason game? I don't know. I mean, certainly feels like there's a lot of data that they've collected already, and I guess they need a few more. So it is what it is at this point. And let me tell you, the last two press conferences Kellen Moore's had, I mean, he's been hit with probably close to 20 questions about it. Got his composure. That hadn't gotten quite frustrated with us yet, but it just is what it is. The quarterback competition, you're the last quarterback competition still going on in the NFL. So we'll see which way it goes, but I guess we got to wait a couple more days.
With one more preseason game, Sean, aside from the quarterbacks, what are the position battles where you think there are still jobs up for roster spots up for grabs?
Yeah, the final running back's interesting. If they keep four, is it Clyde? Is it the draft pick Devin Neal or Cam Akers? That would be, maybe I shouldn't assume, but that would be the assumption that Bayless Jones Jr. makes the team. But I think he's been, really good camp in preseason. So my own roster projection, I would put him on. The linebacker room is interesting. How many do you keep? That's probably an underrated room. They played pretty well throughout camp and preseason. And then, it's not the competition that you talk about much, but I have no idea who's going to win this punter competition. I mean, they had 3 at one point. Now they're down to 2. It's been fairly inconsistent between Burnip and Kroger. So where, who ultimately becomes the punter could be up for grabs. And then also, there's also the chance that neither guy wins it. Similar to what the Saints did a couple of years ago with the kicker battle when they brought in Will Lutz late after everything was over. And then, how many linemen do you keep? That's certainly something. And then, look, the wide receiver room is interesting because I think it's pretty easy to see who has played the best. The problem is you've got basically 4 guys in Tipton, Cooks, Olave, and Shahi who are, basically different versions of the same player. I mean, they're all 5'11". They can all run. And you need someone with size. Cedric Wilson's a guy right now that obviously has that size. But, I mean, you saw the interception, Matt. I mean, a bigger receiver, there's a collision there for that ball. And, maybe that's an incomplete pass. Maybe that's a catch. But probably not an interception. So you feel the need for that as well. So a lot of positions where you look at and you say, okay, this last game could really sort of help someone or a few players and could really hurt a few players as well.
That's why adding Brandon Cooks didn't make a lot of sense to me. Not to say Brandon Cooks can't still play. It's just you've got two other versions of Brandon Cooks in Olave and Shaheed. go get.
And then honestly, Tipton has really come on over the last. He did the same thing last year, but Tipton as well. I mean, I underrated his speed because he can really run. He's a 4.3 guy. I didn't realize that. So even him, in addition to Shaheed and Chris Olave.
I'm not saying he can't. I just need to see it on real NFL Sundays.
No doubt. No doubt about it. No doubt.
Go back to Devin Neal for a second, because I know he missed a couple weeks with the hamstring, was back out there. Anything you've noticed from him? Because, man, we were real high on him as maybe a steal in the draft, and it was a bummer to see him suffer that injury.
Yeah, I mean, look, he got the ball a couple times today. They were working on some Wildcat stuff that it was interesting to see. That's a tough one because, to me, it comes down to him or Clyde in that running back room. Now, I could be totally off base, but that's really what it sort of feels like. Clyde has clearly outplayed him, but, man, do you really give up on a draft pick that got injured that quickly? And I just or try to, cut the guy and hope to bring him back to practice squad or whatever the case may be. So I think Devin Neal that's one of the more intriguing players because you don't want to cut a draft pick. It's been done before, but he has missed time, and other players have played well in his absence, players that have connections to the state, obviously, in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think he's a player that you talked about earlier, a player that would need a big game or a good game. I think that would certainly help him, help his cause if he does well Saturday against the Broncos.
By the way, would you keep Kroger or Burnip?
Right now I have Kroger.
Yeah, me too.
Burnip has been a little too inconsistent really since the start of camp. And honestly, I thought he'd be one of the ones that could make a run to win the battle. I guess he still could, but right now I would go Kroger.
What about you mentioned how many linemen they keep. Usually it's your 5 starters, and then you got an interior guy and then a swing tackle. Is it 7, or do they keep more than that?
Well, you normally would dress 7. You probably would keep 8 or 9, depending on what those players would do in special teams. They've got some young depth that they're trying to develop. That really depends on A, can they contribute on special teams, and B, what's the puzzle look like in other areas or their injuries, for instance, or in the cornerback room with Alontae Taylor down, he probably won't go on IR to start the season. At least that's not what the hope is, but he may not be available to start the season. So you got to pad your numbers there. You can take one off your offensive line group. I think that's always kind of the push and pull. That's why it's a very fluid situation with the roster. So I've seen him keep 8. It's usually a keep 8. They don't dress 8, but I've also seen him keep 9 at certain points, depending on if that player is someone that they like and want to develop.
You think Foskey gets cut?
Yes. I haven't seen it, and then this scheme shift was supposed to help him. He's just, he's nowhere near the ball. He's not stood out once. There hasn't been a single moment where it felt like he stood out. I know he had one small tackle on a tackle on a wide receiver type screen play in the game, late in the game. But I just, for a second round pick, coaching staff that didn't draft him, and this is a new defensive coordinator, a new scheme. It certainly feels like he's on the outside looking in. And look, you just kept waiting and waiting. Like, I was high on Falsey when it came out of Notre Dame. It just has not clicked for him since he's been here. Saints
drafting athletic pass rushers, man. It's a disturbing trend over the last decade. With the exception of Trey Hendrickson, but he was a third-round pick, and who saw that coming? Last thing for you: is there any a player either that you think makes it or that they cut that you think will be a little eye-catching for one reason or another?
Make it or cut. Like I said, I think Clyde's going to be a tough cut. He can still make the team because I think he's really played well, and I think he does well picking up the blitz, and he obviously can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think he's earned a spot, but sometimes it's just that puzzle with the veteran type situation. Sometimes you can almost do the handshake thing where hopefully by week 2 you can bring him back. There's all kind of crazy ways you can manipulate it.
He's on Twitter at Sean Fazan, Fox 8. Give him a follow.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.